Hello Indie Game fan, there are a surprisingly large number of releases in November, which is odd since I thought things would be winding down, but yet there are more Game of the Year contenders, so let's begin with Astral Ascent, a gorgeous pixel art roguelike platformer that is releasing out of early access, in which the 12 zodiac signs are the bosses that you must face as you attempt to escape an astral prison. The playable characters are fun, and the boss fights have impressed so far in early access, with the 1.0 release completing the game and somehow has 17 unique endings, so colour me intrigued for sure. A big shoutout goes to Singaporean developer Battle Brew Productions, since I think Cuisineer is their first attempt at a PC/console game after being mobile focused for years, in which this roguelike title combines the combat of a dungeon crawler with running your own restaurant. It certainly follows in the footsteps of games like Moonlighter, Reciteer and Battle Chef Brigade that came before it, but has nice art with the food items that you can cook having a distinctly Asian flavour to them as well, which is always neat to see in games. It is not easy running an indie game studio, let alone in Singapore of all places, so these developers deserve some love, but beyond that, cooking in games is really a favourite mechanic of mine, so I always love to see it implemented and just get hungry looking at the food, so I hope that the combat end of things holds up. A long in-development title also announced its release date, so I have to share, since I've had my eye on Small Saga for many years, being a throwback Japanese-inspired turn-based RPG set beneath the streets of London in a world of mice. You play as an angry mouse who wields a Swiss army knife as a primary weapon, seeking vengeance on a god who stole his tail. I love how everyday objects are represented here, such as a lighter being the primary weapon of the wizard character, or how a scalpel acts as a halberd type weapon, and if you love this genre like me, be sure to give it a go. If you're this deep into a video on indie games, I'm betting that you love video games, so introducing Lock On Volume 6, the latest gaming journal/physical book all about video games that comes to us from the UK publisher Lost in Cult. Having physical video game stuff around the house is awesome, but if you're sick of figurines and CDs, how about a thoughtful book with this having 400 plus pages of awesome art, interviews, postmortems and more, with a giant 70-page feature on The Legend of Zelda and essays on Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Breath of the Wild, Tales of the Kingdom and more, with gorgeous hardcover art on Final Fantasy, as well as the upcoming The Invincible 4D softcover edition. And for indies specifically, we have art and features on Cocoon, Doctornia, Alien Hominid and more, so pick up a copy via my affiliate link below. Speaking of Alien Hominid, the next game from the Behemoth, creators of Castle Crashers, is titled Alien Hominid Invasion, and is actually the sequel to their Flash game classic Alien Hominid from 2002. One of the key people behind the Behemoth is Tom Falk, also known as the creator of Newgrounds, so there is certainly video game and indie game history tied into the company, with games like The Binding of Isaac and Meat Boy first finding their footing on their site. But back to this, it's a mayhem-filled run-and-gun platformer in which you and your alien friends invade Earth and shoot at the humans. It's amazing how well their art style has held up even after all these years, one of the advantages of not constantly chasing after photorealistic graphics, and it simply works for this game. There's a little bit of roguelite in this, although I wouldn't full-on call it one, since you're taking a non-linear path through the levels en route to destroying the enemy HQ, with different modifiers, weapons, cosmetics and more to unlock, as well as gameplay-altering mutations to give your little alien a boost, and if their previous games are anything to go by, should be excellent as well.
The once peaceful and benevolent queen has turned against her subjects, casting Farul into darkness and despair. The resistance is rising, and the fight for freedom has begun.
I did preview For the King 2, but it's worth mentioning once again since the first game is secretly one of the most popular roguelite RPG titles, and this looks to be bigger and better. It kind of replicates the tabletop RPG experience for video games, with unique scenarios and story campaigns to embark on, with 5 in total, spanning 30 hours of gameplay in the launch version, with classic turn-based combat set in a fantasy world. Along with Astral Ascent are a number of titles launching out of early access as well, including Roboquest, a very fast-paced roguelite first-person shooter that is awesome, where I quite like the almost Borderlands look to the game, but don't be fooled, this is a run-based title through and through. There have been but a handful of great roguelite first-person shooters such as Gunfire Reborn, and I would consider Roboquest to be in the same vein, with different character classes, a ton of different weapons, roguelite upgrades within a run and persistent upgrades across runs, and somehow even has 2-player co-op support, so it only looks to get better in 1.0, so go kick some metal butt in this. Similarly, the wholesome agriculture and relationship building role-playing game Coral Island is also releasing out of early access, and for the most part is a fairly by-the-numbers one of these, but is excellently executed, adding on a more explicit environmentalist theme and having some mystical elements like mermaids as well, all as you attempt to stop an evil corporation from polluting the waters. There's farming, crafting, fishing, mining, chopping trees, fighting, NPCs to get to know and romance, animals to raise, and your own farm and home to upgrade, so nothing too crazy, but it's very pretty and pleasant and is for fans of the genre. Oh yes, one more thing, the developer did also release DLCs, with proceeds going to environmental charities, so good on them as well. Here's a little bit of a curveball for number 3, since Retopia is the next game from South Korean developer Castle Games, best known for the roguelite, defense, city builder, deck builder, Retropolis, and while the rats are back in this game, it looks more like Oxygen, not ink. There's resource gathering and base building, kind of like Terraria, as well as defense elements like their previous game or like in Kingdom, along with colony sim elements of managing your rats, having to sustain and expand the city while keeping your people alive and fed, potentially being another game that you can sink hundreds of hours into. I'm kind of torn between this and number 1, so the order is kind of interchangeable, since the anime bullet hell Metroidvania Tevi is a gorgeous looking game and comes to us from the developer of Rebi Ribi, which released 7 years ago, where somehow that game has sustained this developer all these years, so it's definitely interesting to see their next project. It has beautiful hand-drawn and pixel art, intense boss fights and a variety of biomes to explore, and might secretly be a dark horse contender for Metroidvania of the Year. And of course, the much hyped gothic horror Metroidvania The Last Faith takes pole position since it's one of my most anticipated games of the year, although it might have gotten to the point of overhype, with some of you in the comments betting that the Metacritic score will be 70 or lower, so let's see how this does with more awesome looking pixel art games in this video.